All right, I turned the page over, starting here on 8. Here, if we look at 8, 8 squared root of 3, and 16, I might go ahead and guess that 16 is the biggest. Well, let's make sure, because this right here, we could actually make out to be something else. It's not 8. It's going to be bigger than 8. So if I take 8 and I square root of 3, 8 times the square root of 3, and I hit enter, I get that this is actually 13.86. Rounding that 5 to a 6 there. So now I know that 16 is the biggest. So the first phase of this question is this a triangle? A plus B greater than C. 8 plus 13.86, is that greater than 16? Well, 8 plus 13 is 21, and then I still have that 0.86. Is that greater than 16? Yes. This makes a triangle. Now classify it. Use the Pythagorean theorem, c squared. Now comparison box, a squared plus b squared. Now, c is the 16 compared to 8 squared plus 8 square root of 3 squared. Now notice what I did right here. I put that in parentheses. Our calculator struggles with this, okay? As I look just strictly at this part right here with the calculator, if I have 8 square root of 3 and then I square it, the calculator is only going to square the square root of 3 part. So what the calculator does right here is it says, okay, well, the square root of 3 squared is 3. So it goes 8 times 3 and gives us that 24. We don't want that. What we have to do is we have to plug it in, because I want to square this whole thing here. I want to square the 8 and the square root of 3. I have to put in parentheses. Then I close the parentheses and then square it. Big difference in our answer there. Okay, and what happened is this square, we squared the 8 to get 64. Then we squared the square root of 3 and got 3. So it ends up being 64 times 3. And that's where we get that 192. So be very careful right there. Okay, I need to check the 16 squared. So what we get here, 16 squared is 256 compared to 64 plus 192. And 64 plus 192 is 256. What goes in the box? Equals. And if it's equals in the box, then this triangle would be a right triangle. So I really wanted to look at that to talk about that 8 square root of 3 and squaring it. So that was a popular question today. Okay, on this next one, 11, 11, 15. Remember, C is the biggest. We're going to test this out. 11 plus 11, A plus B, is 22. Is that bigger than 15? Yes. This is a triangle. Now, what type of triangle is it? I'll use the Pythagorean theorem. C squared compared to A squared plus B squared. 15 squared. 11 squared plus 11 squared. All right, 15 squared. I can use my calculator. 15 squared. Oop, I messed up. 15 squared. 225. And I'm going to compare that. And I'm going to just go ahead and type all of that in. 11 squared plus 11 squared. I'm going to take the lazy way here and get 242. Which one's bigger? 242 is. The alligator's eating the 242. That's a less than sign. And less than is acute. On the next one, here's my C, my A, my B. 8 plus 14. 8 plus 14. 22. Is 22 bigger than 22? No. This is not a triangle. We can't form a triangle if we have line segments of 8, 14, and 22. Is there any reason to do phase 2 of this? Do we classify it if it's not a triangle? No. No classification. Okay, I just learned a valuable lesson. I had to put my phone on airplane mode as I'm recording this, so when I get a phone call, it doesn't automatically stop my recordings. All right, so luckily I didn't get too far. On this segment right here, what we're gonna look at is the 45, 45, 90 triangles and the 30, 60, 90 triangles. Okay, off of this, if you notice that there's always one of these angles missing. Well, if it's 45 and 90, this other one has to be 45. Remember, all of these angles have to add up to 180 inside of a triangle. So here's 45, this one's 45. If this is 60, this has to be 30. Because 30, 60, and 90 add up to 180. And then the last one down here, 30, 60, 90. All of those have to add up to 180. Okay? I have harped and harped and harped on this. I hope y'all don't skip this step. Number 1, label. If we label this, opposite of the 90 is x square root of 2. That doesn't help us solve anything here yet, but opposite of the 45 is x. That does. Opposite of the 45 is x. Because of this, we can do step 2. Solve for x. Well, x equals 6. Now, step 3. Plug it in. So, b to I is x. What is x? X is 6. F to I is x square root of 2. We already know x. X is 6. Plug in 6 there, and we have 6 square root of 2. Once again, 45, 45, 90, label. Opposite of the 90 degree is x square root of 2. That's going to help us find out x right there. Opposite of the 45 degree angle is x, and x right there. Once we have it labeled, we can look at x square root of 2 equals 10 square root of 2. Look at that. Think to yourself, what does x have to be? Visually, they both have a square root of 2. 10 is here, x is here. If we were going to take a guess, x equals 10 would be a great guess. Now let's show it. How do we prove this mathematically? Let's show the work. X times the square root of 2. We want to counter this. We want to isolate that x, so we got to counter the multiplication of the square root of 2. I'm going to divide by the square root of 2. And any number divided by itself is 1. But if I do that to the left side, I also have to do it to the right side. I'm going to divide by the square root of 2 here, and it also cancels out, and I'm left with x equals 10. Now from C to I is x. X is 10. I to A is x, and x is 10. 30, 60, 90 triangles. The ratio is different. The process is the same. Opposite of the 90 is 2x. Opposite of the 30, x. Opposite of the 60, x square root of 3. Here's what's going to help us solve for x. 2x and 13 are paired up. That tells you that 2x equals 13. Can you solve for x? What I hope you're thinking is that you're going to take this 2 times x, and you're going to counter that and divide by 2. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And we get x equals 6.5. And this is a decimal, and that's okay to have a decimal here. It's an exact decimal. There's no rounding involved. 6.5 is the answer. Now, from D to E, we have it labeled x square root of 3. And we know that x is 6.5. Plug it in. 6.5 square root of 3. From E to A, it's x, and x is 6.5. Okay, last one here, 30, 60, 90. First step, label. Opposite of the 30, x. It's going to help us. Opposite of the 90, 2x. Opposite of 60, x square root of 3. Right here, what is x? X equals 3. Third step, plug it in. From F to E, 2x. 2 times 3, which is 6. E to D, x square root of 3. And x is 3, so we have 3 square root of 3. Okay, 15 is a great problem right here. What we have on 15 is that we have two triangles sharing one side. The top triangle here is a 30, 60, 90 triangle, and the bottom is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. We're going to keep this exactly the same, solve it exactly how we've been working. The only thing is we're going to ignore this bottom part right here. We're going to work this in two phases. We're going to look at this 30, 60, 90 first. There's my 60, there's my 30. And given that this side here is 9 square root of 3, I want to label this out. Opposite of the 30 is x, opposite of the 90, 2x, opposite of the 60 is x square root of 3. I'll let you get a little time, draw that out, have that on your paper. Very important right there. Hopefully you're catching on to this and jumping to and knowing what x is right now. But even if you don't, x square root of 3 equals 9 square root of 3. And looking there, x has to be 9. So that tells us that this side here is 9, and this side here, 2x, 2 times 9 is 18. So SW is 9, SA 18. That's halfway. Well, we have to look at the other half, this 45, 45, 90 triangle, to figure out what it is that we need to use. So opposite of the 45 is x, opposite of the 45 is x, opposite of the 90 is x square root of 2. All right. Now, using what we know from the last thing, that this SA is 18, okay, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to solve this as x square root of 2 equals 18. We're solving for x, but I want you to remember that this is different than what we did here. This is part 2 to this problem. I'm going to divide by the square root of 2. The reason why I did that is because this is x times the square root of 2, so I got to counter with division. But if I do it to the left, I have to do it to the right. We talked about a rule last time is that if you have a square root on the bottom, you got to get rid of it. Can't have it. So you take that number, square root of 2, and you multiply the top by it, multiply the bottom by it. Across the top, 18 square root of 2, and along the bottom here, you end up with 2 because you get the square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. Okay, we just want to look real quick. Does this simplify? Does 18 divided by 2? Yes. We get 9 square root of 2. 9 square root of 2. So, S to T, that's x. This x, the 45, 45, 90 part of this, is 9 square root of 2. A to T, or TA, would be exactly the same. I know a lot of times people get confused about, well, hey, you said x up here was 9, now you did it down here, and it's 9 square root of 2. Just remember that the first phase of this was up here, and we solved for just that top half. Got the information we needed, and then went to the bottom half and solved it separately.